Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today I want to talk about the inventor, the godfather, the master of electric bass, a name that really should be at the top of the list of greatest electric bass players of all time because he pretty much invented the style, and he comes from an extremely beloved and well-known musical lineage, and is someone whose music I think everyone who's interested in the bass or just good music in general should be listening to. And this man sitting behind me is Monk Montgomery. Now, Monk obviously was someone from a very, very musical family. His brothers Buddy and Wes were great musicians in and of themselves, Buddy being a great vibist or vibraphonist, and Wes being one of the pioneers of jazz electric guitar. So when it came to plugging things in, at least two of the three brothers were pioneers in their own right. But Monk in particular really pioneered an instrument that was only a few years old when Leo Fender invented it, and he started playing it in the early 1950s. Now, let's just look back at what was going on at that time to just really realize how revolutionary he was. So when Monk first started playing the electric bass guitar, rock and roll really wasn't even a thing. I mean, it had its sort of predecessor genres like R&B, but true rock and roll didn't exist. The term itself didn't exist. And jazz was all about the contrabasso, the upright bass. Now, look at some of the videos of the early rock and roll bands. Look at the early Elvis stuff, the early Chuck Berry stuff, the early Bill Haley and the Comet stuff. And most of those musicians who were playing bass in those bands would have been playing the upright. But while rock and roll was still, playing the big old upright, Monk was already plugged in and he was playing his Fender Jazz electric bass. And you can hear him on many albums with his two brothers, the Montgomery brothers. You could hear him play in a band that he did with Buddy. Really, really good stuff called The Monster Sounds. And best of all, I really love his solo work. He didn't release too many solo albums because he was busy playing with lots of other prominent musicians. He was a sideman for so many huge people, including Lionel Hampton's band, where he debuted his electric bass. But check out his solo albums, many of which, although not all, are on your Spotify's and your Tidals and your Apples. Starting with his first solo album from 1969 called It's Never Too Late. Absolutely wonderful album with some great musicians playing along with him. But I would say that an even more sort of illustrative album of his smooth versatility and virtuosity on the instrument came the following year with Bass Odyssey. And the cover of the album is what's pictured behind me. Now, this one is less easy to get a hold of. It is out there, but you're going to have to search for it a bit. But I really recommend you get your hands on it. People have uploaded it to YouTube. It's just such a great album. It shows just what a all-around great musician he is, because while his bass soloing is incredible, and while his ability to be the glue that keeps everything together is great, it's the musicality of his bass that's so important. I think a lot of bassists and drummers, and I was a drummer, they sort of rely on the fact that, your guitars and your trumpets and your saxophones and your pianos are sort of up there playing the melody line, and you can sort of just be almost metronomic, but that makes for bad musicianship. Great drummers lead with the melody, and great bass players know that they are the glue that makes the melody make sense. They are the binding material that makes the harmonics of the music and the chord changes. It makes them feel meaningful and gives them this both sonic and emotional value that makes the music something we want to all listen to. So definitely check out that album. And then he did something that was really kind of fusiony, 1974's Reality. The title track should have been a huge hit in 1974 because it's got the groove, it's got the lyrics, it's got everything. And so when we talk about great jazz bass players, I mean, someone like Ron Carter comes to mind, but Ron only started to play electric bass guitar begrudgingly decades after Monk did. And when we talk about pioneers of the electric bass, we look at people from the fusion world like Jack Bruce, who played with Cream and Tony Williams and so many others. We look at people like the great Stanley Clarke, Alfonso Johnson, later Jaco Pastorius. In the rock world, we look at people like John Entwistle and Chris Squire, and later on the stuff that we saw in the 90s with Primus or Red Hot Chili Peppers, Level 42 with the slap bass, Mark Franklin with the fretless. But all of these people couldn't have done what they did without Monk Montgomery. He is the king, the originator of the way to play this instrument, which was surprisingly new when he picked it up. He didn't really have any influences on this particular version of the bass. It was him, and he put it out into the world for everyone else to run with. So check out his stuff. It's really great. It's so musical, great playing, and very soulful. I think you're going to really enjoy it. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.